Morning, Edgewood. Good morning. Happy Good Friday. Way off. Sorry. Happy Palm Sunday to you. As you saw, we are in Mark chapter 11, jumping into Passion Week. We've been, these last couple of weeks, been working our way through Mark chapter 10, and last week we finished up what is known as the discipleship discourse. Really what Jesus has been doing for the last couple of chapters in the Gospel of Mark is he's been trying to communicate to his disciples exactly what it means to be a follower of him. This is what it means to follow me. This is what my kingdom looks like. And he gave them pretty straightforward teaching, if you were to ask me. And he gave them some very practical examples. And at the end of the day, I think his disciples are still completely clueless as to the reality and as to the nature of what his kingdom is going to be. And they just don't understand what it means to be part of Jesus' upside-down kingdom. And I think we still fail to understand that at times. So give them a little bit of sympathy. And so we're jumping into Mark chapter 11. 10 chapters down. We've got 6 to go. Things are about to potentially slow down a little bit. So again, it's fascinating to me to look at Mark. The last 10 chapters of Mark have covered about 3 years of Jesus' ministry. 3 years. The final 6 chapters, 1 week. 1 week. And so some have even referred to Mark as a passion narrative with a extended introduction, because Mark, proportionate to the rest of his gospel, gives the most time to this last week of Jesus' life. And really, we're going to see today, this week, this Passion Week, is going to begin with Jesus' arrival into Jerusalem during the Passover festival. And this is traditionally what people call the triumphal entry. And why it might be triumphal for some people, I think at the end of the day, it's not going to be not going to be too many triumphs. And so let's look. Mark chapter 11, beginning in verse 1. When they approached Jerusalem at Bethphage and Bethany near the Mount of Olives, he sent 2 of his disciples. And so if you recall from last week, Jesus was leaving Jericho, and he kind of had this encounter with a blind man named Bartimaeus and performed this miracle and healed him. And it was this huge, huge miracle and this huge testimony to really what Jesus came to do. He leaves Jerusalem. He continues on he leaves Jericho and he continues on to Jerusalem, and he stops at the Mount of Olives near Bethany, a few miles outside of the city. Now Bethany was a familiar place to Jesus. This was the home of some of his closest friends, Mary, Martha, and Lazarus, the latter of whom he actually raises from the dead in the Gospel of John. So in the Gospel of John, we actually see this miracle where Jesus raises Lazarus from the dead. So he was familiar, and this is really where Jesus is going to spend the last week of his life each night. So we'll kind of see this pattern. Jesus travels into the city during the day, and then at night he retreats to Bethany, where he's going to essentially spend the night. So he arrives on the Mount of Olives. He's near Bethany, and he sends 2 disciples on ahead to the next village. And he told them, he gives them some specific instructions. Go into the village ahead of you, and as soon as you enter it, you will find a colt tied there on which no one has ever sat. Untie it, bring it, and if anyone says to you, "Why are you doing this?" say, "The Lord needs it, and we'll send it back here right away." Now, again, these seem like very specific instructions, and I just have to stop, because I think it can be really easy for us thinking ahead to this last week of Jesus' life, where at times it might seem like things are out of Jesus' control. Right? He gets arrested, he gets beaten, he gets crucified. And to the average person, these are things that they did not have a handle over. And I'm just thankful that we have a God who has a hand in all of this. To every single detail, his crucifixion was part of his plan. His arrest was part of his plan. Everything that happens during this week was part of his plan. Even these tiny little details surrounding his triumphal entry. He is in control of every single bit of it. And he knows exactly what is going to happen, and he knows how it's going to happen, and he knows when it's going to happen. And he has complete control over all of it. He's got it all worked out to the very last detail. And I'm just thankful that we worship a sovereign God who is in control over all things. And so again, even in this case, Jesus has it all planned out. Now his disciples, again, I think he preemptively answers questions that they have for them. Okay, go into this village and bring a donkey. All right, well, where's the donkey? He tells them where to find it. Well, who does the donkey belong to? Like, what if they stop us and ask us, why are you taking my donkey? He gives them the answer to give to them. Tell them the Lord needs it. Tell them the Lord needs it. Not just not just our mentor, our rabbi, our teacher, not just Jesus, the Lord needs it. And Jesus is reminding his disciples even now of his divinity, because this is a divine title right here. This is capital L, capital O, capital R, capital D, Lord. God needs it. God requires this of you. And I'm operating with my divine authority and my divine control, and his disciples go, and everything essentially plays out exactly how Jesus said that it would. So they went, verse 4, they found a colt outside in the street, tied by a door. They untied it, and some of those standing there said to them, what are you doing? Why are you untying our colt? And they answered them just as Jesus had said, and so they let him go. And again, just beautiful, beautiful. Jesus has complete control over the entire situation. Now, Mark, in the verses that follow, excludes a key detail that I want to focus on from some of the parallel accounts in the other Gospels. So in the Gospel of Matthew and the Gospel of John, they both include a reference to the fulfillment of a prophecy from Zechariah 9:9. So look real quick at Zechariah chapter 9. Verse 5, tell daughter Zion, see, your king is coming to you, gentle and mounted on a donkey, on the colt, the foal of a donkey. And so what Matthew and John are cluing us into, they're referencing back to this prophecy, showing that Jesus riding on a donkey is actually a fulfillment of messianic prophecy. Now what's happening in Zechariah's day is Zechariah is a prophet after the exile. So if you know anything about exilic history and Israel's history, Israel got taken into exile by Babylon. They spent about 70 years in exile, and then finally, after about 70 years, they are allowed to return home and rebuild. And they do rebuild. They rebuild Jerusalem, they rebuild the city, they rebuild the temple. It's a season of joy, getting to rebuild and kind of have a degree of autonomy. Once again, they're no longer under the rule of this foreign empire, but it's also a season of struggle because things aren't the same. The city, it's not the same. And there are people who were alive before who are still alive now, and they remember, this isn't the same. It's not the same city. It's not the same temple. It's not the same people. And really, more than anything else, the whole rebuilding of everything reminded them of the reality of how they ended up there in the first place. That the reason they got taken into exile was because of failed king after failed king after failed king, where Israel essentially goes on this downward trajectory, resulting in their judgment and their destruction. And so the fact that we are having to rebuild it all reminds us of all of the really bad kings that we have, and it reminds us that we don't even have a king on the throne right now. There is no king over Israel. At the time of Zechariah, they were under the rule of the Persians, and so there is no king of Israel. And so Zechariah comes along, and Zechariah is this prophet from God, and he has this message of hope to the people. Hope in a future king that would come, that would bring restoration to the people. And Zechariah tells them the sign that this king has come, the king that is going to restore everything back to the way that it once was. So he's going to ride into Jerusalem on a donkey. What does Jesus do? He rides into Jerusalem on a donkey. And so it's very intentional. It's very intentional. Jesus is riding into Jerusalem on a donkey is this declaration of kingship. And it's a declaration that he has come to bring the restoration that the people are in need of. Now, it's not the restoration that they want, but it is the restoration that they are in need of. And so verse 7, the disciples brought the colt to Jesus. They threw their clothes on it, kind of as like a makeshift saddle, and he sat on it. Verse 8, many people spread their clothes on the road, and others spread leafy branches cut from the fields. So they bring this colt to Jesus. He sits on it. He begins this parade into Jerusalem. And how do the people respond? They get all excited. They come and think literal parade, right? Everybody comes out. They line the streets. They're cheering. They're celebrating. And then this unusual thing happens. They start taking their coats and just throwing them into the road. They go and they break off these big palm branches from the trees around them and throw them in the road. And again, kind of we're like, what? Like, yeah, I remember like our kids doing this on actual Palm Sunday, kind of waving the leafy branches around. But it's like, why are they doing this? This is actually a form of welcome to a king, which we can't miss. So if you look back at 2 Kings chapter 9, we see the spreading of cloaks while a king enters was a form of welcome during an inauguration. So 2 Kings chapter 9, this is the inauguration of King Jehu. Each man quickly took his garment and put it under Jehu on the bare steps. They blew the ram's horn and they proclaimed, Jehu is king. And so what are the people doing by spreading their cloaks out on the road for Jesus to walk over? What are they saying? Jesus is king. Jesus, not only are you riding on this donkey as a fulfillment of prophecy of the king who's going to come to bring restoration, we are acknowledging your kingship. We are honoring you and we're welcoming you and we're giving you this ceremonial welcome fit only for a king. They're calling Jesus their king. And then again, what they say next is only even further acknowledgement of Jesus as king. They went ahead and they followed and they shouted, Hosanna! Blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord. Blessed is the coming kingdom of our father David. Hosanna in the highest heaven. Now I feel like, and maybe it's not true, but I feel like we throw this word around a lot in church, this word Hosanna, right? We sing songs that says Hosanna. Do we actually know what this word means? What does the word Hosanna actually mean? What are the people saying by declaring Hosanna to Jesus? So the word Hosanna literally means save us. And so again, Jesus riding on a donkey, being given this kingly welcome. What are the people saying to Jesus as he parades down the street into Jerusalem? Jesus, save us! Save us, Jesus! Now, really, again, I don't know if it's written this way in your Bibles. In my Bible, whenever words are in bold, it's usually referencing that it's a quote from another passage somewhere. And so right here, this is actually a reference to Psalm 118. So if you were to flip to Psalm 118, you would see these words actually quoted. Now, Psalm 118 was a song of thanksgiving for deliverance. And so the people would sing Psalm 118, thanking God for all the ways that he has saved them, thanking God for all the ways that he has delivered them from the hands of their enemies. And it specifically was a song that was sung during the festival of Passover. Now, again, what's Jesus coming into Jerusalem? What season is it? It's Passover. It's the time for Passover, which is celebrating Israel's deliverance from Egypt. God's miraculous delivering of Israel from Pharaoh in Egypt and bringing them out of Egypt into the wilderness where he's going to enter into a covenant with them. That's what Passover is celebrating, God delivering his people. Now, on the eve of Passover, Jesus is entering into this city, and the people are taking this song that they commonly would have sung to remember God delivering them from the hands of Egypt, and now what are they saying? Jesus, save us, deliver us, not from Egypt. Who do they need saving from now? They think they need saving from Rome. All right, and so again, you have Jesus entering Jerusalem at the time of Passover, being hailed as a king, with the people shouting to him, save us. The people think the time is right. Now is the time. Now is the time for this deliverer to save us. Let's make Jesus king, and let's be delivered from our enemies. Now one more detail that we miss, and it has to do with the donkey. I think the people even missed this. The people of Jesus' day who are yelling, save us. I think they missed it because if they got this detail, I don't think that they would have been yelling the things that they did. When did kings ride on donkeys? We don't often picture kings on donkeys, do we? What do kings usually ride? Horses. Now, why did the king ride a horse? They ride it into battle because it's stronger, it's faster, it's higher. Can you picture a king going into battle, leading his army, riding on a donkey? No, right? And I think that if you were that opposing army and you saw the king that you're fighting against kind of trotting into battle with the king with the donkey hee-hawing, well, like you'd just start laughing, and you'd be like, Thanks for the victory, right? Again, we're here on our horses, and we're going to take you out on your donkey. So kings did not ride donkeys into battle. When did kings ride donkeys? Not when you're at war. So if you're not riding a donkey when you're at war, when are you going to ride a donkey? When you're at peace. Kings rode donkeys when they returned from the war. This is what, and we see this. We see this even in the Old Testament at times. There's Solomon. Rides a donkey into Jerusalem. I think it's 2 Kings chapter 2. He rides a donkey into Jerusalem. And what he is communicating to the people is, I've brought peace. The battle is won. The victory is had. We are not going to war because we have peace. And what is Jesus riding into Jerusalem on? A donkey. Because he's not trying to tell the people, hey, get ready, we're going to war against Rome. That's not what he's trying to communicate. He is trying to tell the people, I have brought peace. You do not need to worry. I have brought peace. And it's peace that is going to be accomplished on the cross just a few days later. So this donkey speaks to Jesus' mission to bring peace between God and his people. And it's a very different peace from what the people were expecting. And you just have to imagine that at this time, again, the energy levels are high. They're ready to rally behind him. What is Jesus going to do next? Verse 11. He went into Jerusalem, into the temple, and again, the crowds are just following him. And there's this excitement, there's this energy. The king is here. He's going to save us. We're going to rally behind him. The time is now. After looking around at everything, since it was already late, he went out to Bethany. Just walks into Jerusalem, goes to the temple, takes a look around, turn around, goes right back out to where he came from. And how anticlimactic was this for the people? The crowds are proclaiming him as king, and then he just turns around and walks away. Right? The crowds, they're going to disperse. They're going to kind of, again, this is going to lose some of the momentum that they thought they were gaining. The crowds are going to return. And I think it's ironic, and I just have to assume that the same people that were in the crowds on Sunday yelling, save us to Jesus, are going to be the same people who on Friday, just a few days later, are going to be yelling, crucify. Because he's not the king that they were expecting. He didn't turn out to be what they wanted in a king. So they yelled, save us on Sunday, and they're yelling, crucify on Friday. Verse 12, Monday. All right, we're if you're tracking along with Passion Week, Palm Sunday, the next day. So now it's Monday. When they went out from Bethany, he was hungry. Which again, I think Jesus often does so much of the miraculous that we often forget that he's also fully human. Like, yes, he is God, and he puts his divinity on display all the time. But Jesus was also fully man, and he displays his humanity right here. His human nature is on full display. He's hungry. He's hungry. I want something to eat. Seeing in the distance a fig tree with leaves, he went to find out if there was anything on it. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, because it's not the season for figs. And he said to it, may no one ever eat fruit from you again. And his disciples heard it. So again, Jesus is hungry. He sees a fig tree. And Mark tells us it's not the season for figs. But what does Jesus notice about the tree? It has leaves on it. And leaves on a fig tree are a sign of fruit. And so even though it's not the season for figs, the fact that there are leaves makes Jesus think, at least from a distance, I'm going to be able to eat some figs from this tree. And so he goes to it. And again, even if they weren't full figs, even the buds of figs, if they weren't fully ripened figs, even the buds were edible, and Jesus' hunger could have been relieved. But he comes to it, and there's no fruit. Leaves, yes, but there are no figs. And again, I think the next part can be confusing, all right? Again, because Jesus curses the fig tree. And again, we stop and we're like, Jesus, it's not even the season. Like, why? I get you were hoping that you would find some figs, but Mark even clues us in as this is not the season for figs. So why are you disappointed? And why is this fig tree deserving of this curse? May no one ever eat fruit from you again. Why are you so surprised and so harsh towards this fig tree, Jesus? Because the reality is it's a hypocritical fig tree. Because while it has the outward appearance of having fruit, there is no fruit. There's no substance. And while, again, we read these verses about a fig tree, I think the context of the next verses tell us that this really is not about a fig tree. So bear with me a little bit more. All right, verse 15. They came to Jerusalem. He went into the temple, and he began to throw out those buying and selling. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the chairs of those selling doves, and he would not permit anyone to carry goods through the temple. And so again, we have to understand the context and understand the setting of what is happening here. This is during the time of Passover. Now, Passover was one of the major Jewish holidays. There were two or three, there were like 7 major Jewish holidays, but there were like 2 or 3 that were even bigger than the others, and really Passover is the biggest of them all. And you had people from all over the world traveling to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover, because it's only in Jerusalem at the temple that this can be celebrated. And so you've got these pilgrimages being made by people from all over the world. And some people estimate that the population of Jerusalem would surge to be about 10 times its normal size during Passover. Hundreds of thousands of people all converging into one city at one time. And the reason, and one of the reasons why this was so important, that you had to come to Jerusalem, is because it's only at Jerusalem that you can make a sacrifice, which is one of the things that God commanded his people to do as punishment for their sins. You can't make a sacrifice in your synagogue. You can't make a sacrifice in your backyard. The only place you can actually make a sacrifice that God would accept would be in Jerusalem and at the temple. And so while these people were traveling to Jerusalem to celebrate Passover, they're taking advantage of the fact that they are in Jerusalem and they're going to make a sacrifice. Now, when it comes to making a sacrifice, you've got 2 options. You can bring the sacrifice with you, but depending on how far you are traveling from, that's not very practical. And so, again, you can either bring it with you, or you can buy an animal that is worthy of being sacrificed once you get there. And that's what most people would elect to do. Now, just think of kind of what happens during big events. Okay, I don't know how much you're kind of tracking the World Cup hype that's coming, right? So the United States is hosting the FIFA World Cup this summer, and there's a lot of hype around it. But one of the things that I've noticed is the outrageous prices of things in the cities in which the games are going to be taking place. All right, again, ticket prices alone are outrageous. Hotels, all right? The average price of a hotel in host cities has increased by 300%. Average. Now, Mexico City, who's hosting some games, the price of hotels there has increased by 961% during World Cup games. 961%. And again, we kind of think to ourselves, who in their right mind would pay for that? They're going to pay for it, all right? The reason that they're charging so much is because if you want to attend the game, you don't really have another option. This is exactly what's happening in the temple in Jesus' day. People are traveling to Jerusalem for Passover. They want to make their sacrifice. While they're in Jerusalem, they need to purchase a sacrifice. And so you've got price gouging happening. And so people go to the temple, and in the temple, what they've done is they've set up these little markets, these little vendors, where you've got your sheep vendors and your dove vendors and your goat vendors and all your little vendors, depending on what kind of sacrifice it is that you want to make, and they are charging these outrageous, exorbitant prices for these sacrifices, and people are paying for them because they have no other option. And the ones that are doing the charging, the ones that have increased the cost, for the most part, are the religious leaders. It's the religious leaders in the temple who have marked up these lambs and these goats and these doves to a shameful and immoral rate. Enter Jesus into this scene. All right, he enters into the temple, and he's already encountered the hypocrisy of the religious leaders on a number of other occasions. But now he is seeing the extortion, and he's seeing the bribery, and he's seeing the greed, and he's seeing the dishonesty, and it's all happening in a place designed for worship. And how does he respond? He's filled with this righteous rage, I think is an appropriate word to use, and indignation towards those that are doing this. And he goes to work to clean house. He starts again flipping tables, gets a whip, is driving out these money lenders and these vendors, and because he cannot believe that those that should be the ones leading the people in worship are the ones who are actually making it more difficult for those to do the worshiping. He said it should not be so. It should not be so, because he says, is it not written that my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations? You are making it so that those who aren't from here, who are coming from the other nations, they're Jews living in other nations who are returning, you are making it more difficult for them to do the thing that God has called them to do. This is not just a house for you. It's not just a house for those that live in Jerusalem. It's not just a house for those that live in Israel. It's not just a house for those for whom it's convenient to worship. This is a house of prayer for everybody. Everybody, but you have turned it into a den of thieves. And these people, again, they're keeping people from worshiping God while claiming at the same time that they are the ones who are for the people that are coming and worshiping God. And Jesus isn't having anything of it. And so yet again, we see that Jesus is turning upside down every expectation that people have. Right? Instead of purging Israel from the Gentiles, which is what the people thought Jesus was going to do to Rome. We're going to kick out the Gentiles. Jesus is saying, let the Gentiles come. Let them come. People from all nations, let them come. And he's, in fact, cleansing the temple for the Gentiles to make it easier for them to come to God, not more difficult. Chief priests and the scribes, they heard it, and they started looking for a way to kill him. Right, and they've already been looking for ways to kill him. But again, things are escalating. It's one thing for Jesus to be confronting the religious leaders in Galilee, far removed from the temple. And for the most part, Jesus was encountering kind of itinerant rural Pharisees and religious leaders. Now who is he confronting directly? Chief priests. They're going to stand for none of it. And so they're looking for a way to kill him, but they were afraid because the whole crowd was astonished by his teaching. Despite Jesus not meeting their expectations, they still are astonished by what he says and what he does. Jesus, though, again, on the other hand, he gets done cleansing the temple, flipping the tables. Evening came, and he went back out of the city to Bethany for the night. That's Monday, okay? Monday. Now we get to Tuesday. Again, we're getting closer and closer to Friday. Again, he's picking the pace up, though. Tuesday, early in the morning, verse 20. As they were passing by, they're heading back to Jerusalem from Bethany, they saw the fig tree withered up from the roots. And Peter remembered and said to him, Rabbi, look, Jesus, look, the fig tree that you cursed yesterday. Right? Again, we remember with this strange encounter. We were on our way to Jerusalem, and you were hungry, and so we stopped, and the fig tree didn't have any figs, and you cursed it for not having any figs, even though it's not the season for figs. And now look what's happened, Jesus. The fig tree that you cursed has withered. What Jesus says next seems a little out of place, okay? Again, what did Peter say? Rabbi, look, the fig tree that you cursed has withered. Verse 22, Jesus replied to them, have faith in God. What? What does having faith in God have anything to do with the fig tree being cursed? All right, so again, we need to think back to these last couple of passages. Think back to the series of events that have happened so far in our passages today. Jesus cursed the fig tree. For what? Why did he curse the fig tree? It was a hypocritical fig tree. All right? So Jesus curses the fig tree for being hypocritical. Who did he encounter next? The chief priests, the religious leaders who are acting like hypocrites. They are acting hypocritical. So who do you think the fig tree represents? Hypocritical religious leaders. And so what is Jesus saying now? If the fig tree represents hypocritical religious leaders and hypocritical religious institutions, and the way that we respond to those people is to have faith in God, even when all the people around you, and especially the religious establishment, fail you, which they will. There are religious leaders, there are pastors who are behaving like hypocrites. There are churches who will fail you. There are leaders who will fail you, even in the midst of all of that. Even in the midst when every religious institution and establishment and leader and pastor fails you. Have faith in God. He is faithful. He is faithful, even when everyone else around us is unfaithful. And we can trust in the one who judges hypocrisy and then who extends faith to those who seek him in faith. And Jesus, he gives us more instruction, right? It's not just any faith that we need to have, right? It's not just have faith in God. Truly, I tell you, if anyone says to this mountain, be lifted up and thrown into the sea, and does not doubt in his heart, but believes that what he says will happen, then it will be done for him. Jesus calls us to have this mountain-moving faith, which, again, is hyperbole. All right, don't go out today and look at a mountain and ask for the mountain to be picked up and moved into the ocean. All right, it might be bad for me. I don't think that's going to happen because I don't think that's what Jesus is actually telling us to do here. All right, he's not literally telling us to go out and command mountains to move. He's saying have this mountain-moving faith. Have the faith that asks God without any doubt. That's what we need to have. We need to have faith that God will do what appears impossible and beyond our ability. And guess what? If it's part of God's purpose, he's going to do it. Because we have a God that delights in doing the impossible. And I even look out at some of you in this room, and I know some of your testimonies are just that God has done the impossible in your life. Because that's what he likes to do. He delights in doing the impossible. All right, but we need to make sure that we understand what prayer actually is. When Jesus instructs us to ask God for these things, what is it that we're actually asking God to do? And God's timing is impeccable. In our Sunday school lesson this morning, we had literally talked about this exact thing. God, praying to God is not like praying to a genie in a bottle that's going to grant your every wish, right? It's not, oh, let me pull out my God card and let me do this little, and ask God for something and he's going to grant my, that's not what prayer is, all right? Prayer is not asking God to change his will to fit our plan. It's asking God to change our will to fit his plan. And if we approach God like this genie in a bottle who's going to do our every wish, what's going to happen? You're going to be disappointed. And you're going to lose faith in God because he's not doing the things that you're asking him to do. That's not how we come to God. We don't ask God to change his will to fit our plan. We ask God to change our will to fit his plan. And we ask God to do the things we are not expecting. And sometimes that means we receive things that we do not want. Sometimes that means we receive things that we're not looking for. Sometimes that means we receive things that we are not expecting. But if we have faith in God, God is going to give us what we need to glorify him. Again, we don't always understand. And I'm not saying it's easy to understand. But this is the kind of faith that Jesus wants us to have. Have faith in God when everyone else around you fails you. And again, Jesus is saying all of these things. He's saying them all against the backdrop of God's temple. All right, again, they're standing around the fig tree right now, but they've been in the temple. They're about to head back to the temple, the place where people come to encounter God and receive forgiveness from God. That's what you do in the temple. You encounter God's presence and you receive forgiveness from God for what you have done. And Jesus has already told them the temple, the house of God, is supposed to be a place of prayer for all nations. So who does God's love and forgiveness now extend to? Does God only love and forgive the Israelites? Does God only love and forgive people who were born in the right place and at the right time to the right family? God's love and forgiveness is now extended to everybody, to all the nations, because of the work that Jesus is going to do. In just a few days, just a few short days from now. And just like God extends forgiveness to all who come to him, so too we should extend the same forgiveness that we have received to those who have done wrong towards us. And that's what Jesus says. Whenever you stand praying, if you have anything against anyone, forgive him, so that your Father in heaven will also forgive you your wrongdoing. When we have been forgiven, we forgive others. And I guarantee you, there is nothing that anyone has done against you that compares to what you have done against God. And if God can forgive you of your sin, we can forgive those of their sin against us. And so Jesus is the King who has come. And in light of that this King who triumphantly has entered into this city, we need to stop and we need to ask ourselves, okay, are we a barren fig tree? Right? Individually, right? Personally, corporately, as a church, do we have the appearance of bearing fruit while having no real substance to it? Are we a barren fig tree? Do we even let people get close enough to our lives to see the reality of our lives, to see our hearts? Just like Jesus gets close to the fig tree and sees, oh yeah, you might have the appearance. There's no substance about you. There's no change in you. If we actually let people get close enough to us to see the real us, what do they see? And maybe our hypocrisy is actually being a hindrance to someone else coming and encountering Jesus. They see our life, oh yeah, that person calls himself a Christian. I know he goes to church every Sunday. Did you see the things that he was doing? Right? He might on the outside might say one thing. Are we being a hindrance to somebody coming and encountering the real and living God. Jesus wants us to follow him, but not just in word. Doesn't want us to proclaim him as king on Sunday and then yell crucify on Friday. He calls us to radically change our life to reflect our desire to know him and follow him. And so I think we each need to probably take some time this week. In what areas am I like the barren fig tree? Right? Do I have the appearance of fruit but no substance? And what do I need to do? What do we need to do to be genuine followers of Jesus that bear much fruit? Because that's what God calls us to. He not only calls us out of our sin through his death, but then he calls us to new life in him that bears much fruit. In word and in deed. Let's pray. God, we thank you for this day. Thank you for you being the king that has come, for you being the king that we needed. You're not always the king that we wanted, but Jesus, you are the king that we needed. And you call us out. You don't passively stand by and allow hypocrites to be in your midst. And so I just pray that you would convict us in our own lives of how we might be living a life of hypocrisy, of how we might be living a life that has the appearance of fruit but no real substance. And just help us to honor you in all that we say and all that we do. And let our lives be a testimony to those around us of who you are and what you have done. Because the only explanation for why we might do the things that we do is because of the radical change that has taken place in our life. When we recognize that we have been forgiven of so much. And Jesus, when we recognize that we are forgiven of a debt that we never could pay, that leads us to live differently. It leads us to talk differently. It leads us to act differently. But we need your help in doing those things. We cannot do them on our own. We cannot ask for you to forgive us our sins and then tell you that we've got it from there. We need you to come into our life. We need you to change us from the inside out. Don't just give us hearts of flesh, but just help our entire life be a living sacrifice to you. We need you, Jesus. We all need you in our life. And I just pray that every single person here today would ask you into their life, that would then live their life holy and pleasing and acceptable to you. It's in Jesus' name we pray. Amen.